See that? That's actually perfect. His elevation has not changed, right? He has not like stuck it way up or lowered the gun way down. When he was reloading, do you see how he just like beat on the side of the gun with his heel of his hand? I would really like it if I didn't see anybody do that ever. I've used a grenade launcher a few times, mostly in a range scenario. You can shoot them pretty far. Those things are sick. That's an army thing. It's like a tank that carries a bridge bay on top of it. You know, I've never seen one of the tank ones in person, but I've seen the ones that are on like the trucks, and it just like spits out a bridge in front of it, and then you can drive over it, which is super cool because I'm used to having to build bridges like by bays that get dropped off the back of trucks. You got to pick them all up. It takes forever. Those are super cool.
RPG! Get up, Private Allen. Rangers lead the way. Move!
I wouldn't make it a habit hiding behind cars, you know, like engine blocks of cars for the most part are pretty bulletproof. They're bulletproof maybe 2 or 3 times, maybe even more than that, or something like our guys up front here. You could see there's kind of like that lip across the river here. That's just straight up earth. The only way you're taking that out is with, you know, some kind of rocket, some kind of grenade, but a car will work in a pinch for sure. As long as it's not on fire or anything, you know, anything like blatantly dangerous. That's about the best way to do this. Just keeping heads down, you know, automatic fire. I'm sure there's some machine gun teams to this guy's left and right, just kind of suppressing the enemy, throwing a few 40 mics on them. Just a freaking cool mission from a cool game, man. I've used a grenade launcher a few times, mostly in a range scenario. You can shoot them pretty far. I think the leaf sight goes out to like 500 or 600 yards. That's what would be considered indirect fire, because you're just going to be lobbing something up so high that it's going through. You don't technically even have to see the target. A lot of times you don't when you're shooting, you know, a couple hundred yards with the M203, the 40 millimeter grenade launcher, or the grenade. Grenades are timed in such a way to where they are actually not going to explode unless they travel about 40 meters. So that's about 150 feet, I believe. But there's a minimum distance. Now, as far as maximum distance, I'm sure there is somebody out there that is just an absolute cowboy with a 203 and can just drop dimes. Relatively few amounts of times I've been able to live fire them, like shooting actual grenades. It's pretty difficult to use that sight. I mean, you pick it up, but it's not a precision weapon by any means, in my eyes, personally. So you can have up-armored Humvees like this. You see Humvees rolling around like just a base. You know, you got guys running ammo out in a Humvee or something like that. Those are going to be, you know, your soft doors, what have you, just general moving around vehicles. But then there are those kind of more frontline Humvees like this that are much more up-armored. And it's pretty hard to see out the windows because they're about that thick. And yeah, you'd feel pretty safe inside of one for the most part. These miniguns, with the miniguns on top of an up-armored Humvee, normally they have what's called a M2 or Mod Deuce 50 cal, either that or a 240, which I have an intimate connection to. It's one of my favorite firearms that the military fields in any capacity, really. There are some tales of guys using them, particularly Army Special Forces, kind of rigging something up like this, but you know, unfortunately, you don't see any Humvees driving around with the minigun on top, not in a long time at least.
Hey, isn't this danger close for the task force?
Come on, since when does Shepard care about danger close?
Like in this scenario where you've got a developed city, right? You've got skyscrapers, businesses, an absorbent amount of people live in this kind of relatively compact area. I know in like the early days of the GWAT, the Global War on Terror, you'd fly over X amount of days before, I'm not exactly sure, but they drop like leaflets and everything, letting people know we're coming. You know, this is not going to be good. You need to get yourself and your family any possessions that you absolutely can't stand to live without, you know, and you guys need to find somewhere else. That didn't work 100% of the time, unfortunately. You do hear a lot of those kind of horror stories, you know, about families being around and stuff. But at this point in time, in this PFC's mind, as he's sitting on his super cool minigun Humvee, he's operating under the assumption that everyone that doesn't need to be there has left. So if you're planning like a massive offensive like this, which is so far far above my wheelhouse, of figuring out when we're going to attack a city, how we're going to do it, planning airstrikes and planning what have you. That all happens at a very, very high level and planned by people that you like to think you have a lot of faith in, like, general grade officers, people like that. In a scenario like this, if you're assaulting into and through a city, at that point in time, it seemed like they were taking pretty heavy fire. But with something like a Humvee mounted minigun, it puts you at kind of an advantage because you are less worried about precision fire. And as you saw him just kind of spray into a side of a building over there, you'd think in a perfect world, I know, hey, everybody in there is bad and they all have guns and they're all shooting at me. Not always the case, but it was the case in Call of Duty, which is, they're not going to let you do too many war crimes in a Call of Duty mission. I mean, we're saying this, I think this is 2 missions under no Russian. But as opposed to like keeping your eyes up to the sky, keeping your eyes down on the ground, in a multiple vehicle convoy like this, you're going to have some people that are kind of looking a little bit more towards one area than the other. We're not hearing everything that's going on through these comms. We got to think it is a game. But just for example, say he's the lead Vic, I can look forward because I know there's nobody in front of me that's friendly that I'm not going to be able to identify pretty quickly. So, if he wants to look more towards IED indicators, ground stuff, of course, keep your eye up on top. You always do when you're looking or you're going into or through a IED rich environment, like somewhere where they could have set up explosive booby traps. One way or another that they're going to take one of these vehicles down. You do what's called 0s, 5s, and 25s pretty often. You do use 0s when you're stopped or when you exit a vehicle, but like the 5s and 25s is important to kind of rehash in your mind every so often. You want to do it pretty frequently, but check 5 meters in front of you and then just kind of like with your eyes open. You never want to get so sucked into something and so tunnel vision that you can't help out and do anything else, or you can't look anywhere else, but you're keeping an eye on 5 meters in front of me. What is 5 meters? You pick that up over time, but you're looking 5s and you move out to 25s, and I'm looking for stacked up rocks, piles of trash, power lines that are hanging over with another indicator. We always said 1 + 1 = IED. I'm saying all this because at this stage of Modern Warfare, in this kind of climate that they made this game in, the IED threat was huge. All of you are going to be passively looking for it, but you want to have somebody that's specifically kind of on top of they're typically more towards the front. See that? That's actually perfect. His elevation has not changed, right? He has not like stuck it way up or lowered the gun way down, and you can see his optic would be in line kind of with that floor where that guy's fallen, and you see the front of the gun is like not even on the top step. It's on like the top of the second step up. The thing I've been seeing with a lot of newer games, it's something I'd like to see kind of become a normal thing, before long, is the ability to like underhand throw flashbangs and grenades. You saw him have to like take a grenade out, pull the pin, he's holding the spoon, and he's like just looking down because he's got to throw it to where it's going to bounce and not go as far as if he were to just keep his eyes and head up, how you want to be situationally aware, and take the grenade, pull the pin, hold the spoon, underhand throw it, so I can basically just roll it into that room there. Now, I probably would have used a flashbang there because it seemed like he was moving into the door, and I don't want to get caught with any of my own frag. When he was reloading, do you see how he just like beat on the side of the gun with his heel of his hand? I would really like it if I didn't see anybody do that ever. That's the way a lot of people do it. I first was training Marines on the rifle range. That was something that we would tell them to do because it definitely works. Like, in all of the Vietnam movies, when you'd see them take like a magazine and they like tap it on their helmet, they're tapping it, they're trying to, seat all those rounds to the back. I've got some pre-banned Colt mags and stuff, but like P-mags nowadays, you see some people tap it on the heel of their hand a little bit. It's like, you don't need to do that anymore, player. We're past that. So I think of that same stuff when I see people, they sit there and then they reload the gun, and then they don't even know it because they might have their thumb around the backside of the magazine like this. But even if they did, all it is just unhinging that thumb, moving it up to the bolt release. You don't even have to move all the way, give it a full slap. You can even move it away a couple inches switches. That's just that's a wasted motion. How much time is it honestly going to cut down for your reloads? Half a second. That half a second could count. It's like there's a time and a place for both, honestly. AKs are very well known for their reliability, for just the amount of crap that you can really get down in there and have the gun still work, perfectly, operationally. Now, M16s, I'm just going to go ahead and change that to AR type platforms used by the military. Those are coming a long way too. I mean, in my mind, they're a little bit easier, and this could just be through all of my own practice and my own training. You just take your average person off the street and you get them, on a range, safe environment, but you get them in front of an AR and then you get them in front of an AK platform. I think people are going to kind of pick up the AR a little bit faster. I know there's an argument for that because, folks that normally use AKs are from underdeveloped areas or areas where, they don't have a lot of exposure to different weapon systems. So they do pick it up pretty fast due to lack of options. If they were to pick up an AR, given a 10-minute class on manual of arms, is what I was fishing for there. Give them like a 10-minute class on manual of arms with the AR and then turn around to the AK. I think that the AR is going to be a little bit easier to put together quickly as far as figuring out how to load, unload. Now, ballistically, 7.62x39 does beat 5.56 in certain applications. Like I was talking about way earlier, cutting through trees, punching through drywall, certain applications like that. If you have a real hard need for something that's going to perform like that, go AK all the way. There are a bunch of good AK training groups around, the US now. It's not just a, NVA or Chinese like throwback when you see an AK. There are very good United States based AK manufacturers. A grenade launcher would be tough to shoot in a building because of what I had mentioned a little bit earlier about them having a certain range before the 40 millimeter grenade is armed. It's about a 40 meter period after it leaves the barrel. So if you're trying to go into anything like less than 40 meters, then you're not going to accurately be able to have the grenade detonate, or if at all. It wouldn't be my first choice. I'm having trouble thinking of a realistic example where a grenade launcher indoors is going to get a job done that my rifle can't. I mean, with the exception of breaching, but at that point, I would think at that point in time, being a combat engineer, we would be in some sort of breaching scenario anyway, or I would have the tools required of me to successfully breach an obstacle or breach a doorway, breach a wall without having to use a 203. All right, guys, that's it for Rangers Lead the Way in Modern Warfare 2. If you would like more experts react, you can always check out Gamology's Facebook or YouTube page. If you would like more of me personally, my Instagram is @shooter.dad. Remember to stay mentally, spiritually, and physically prepared.